Hey everyone, it's Logan, and again we're continuing the Q&A with the Thrills United regional reps, and this video is basically going to have all coaster focused questions. So the first question is, what is your coaster count? And if you don't know what coaster count is, a lot of people who are into coasters tend to count the amount of coasters they've ridden. So like not how many times they ride one coaster, but each individual coaster they've ever ridden, they count up. So if you've ridden 78 individual coasters, your coaster count is 78, and then it just goes on and on from there.
I do want to get this coaster higher. Hopefully I'll be able to with this COVID thing going on, but as of right now, it's 54.
Don't laugh at me, but mine's 56. Remember, I've only been an enthusiast since 2018, and I've only really been to Cedar Point, Busch Gardens, and SeaWorld, and some other smallers.
My coaster count is 80.
My current coaster count is 86, and I hope to get to 100 by the end of this year.
My coaster count is now on 107.
My coaster count is 111.
My coaster count at the moment is 117 coasters.
My coaster count is 125. Not bad for living in Oregon, I guess.
My coaster count is 126.
My coaster count's right now 127. I know it's small.
I stopped keeping track of my coaster count. Not for much of a reason. It stopped being so important to me. But I think the last time that I knew was at 112, and I've ridden some coasters since then. I'm sure it's not that much bigger than that. So anywhere from 112 to 150 maybe. I definitely haven't hit 200 yet.
My coaster count is 203.
My coaster count is now 231.
My coaster count is 250.
My coaster count is currently 255.
My coaster count is 376.
My coaster count at the moment is 412. I'm actually one of the Italian with the higher coaster count on the site, and I'm really proud of it.
My coaster count as of right now is 542 coasters, and I believe this is a good time to clear something up about coaster count. You probably saw a little bit ago that a few people were embarrassed that their coaster count was low, and that's really not something you should be embarrassed of, because everyone has a different situation. The reason my coaster count is so high is because, one, I've had a roller coaster YouTube channel for over 5 years, and I've made well over 500 videos, so it's basically been my job to ride roller coasters and make movies, which oftentimes isn't your situation. And number two, my dad owns his own company called Jeff Dorner Training, which you can find more about at jeffdorner.com. And he's done over 1,000 speaking events in 47 different states, and oftentimes he's able to bring me on some of those trips through flyer miles, so it's really cheap to bring me to all these parks pretty much. And again, a lot of people don't have that opportunity. So don't be ashamed if your coaster count is low, but again, don't think you're the stuff if it's extremely high. If you're a kid and your coaster count is very high, that says more about your parents being willing to bring you to a ton of amusement parks than it does about yourself. I know several adults who legit just drive around the country by themselves and ride coasters by themselves all day just so they can have a high coaster count. And if you enjoy doing that, you do you. I could care less. But personally, that sounds pretty lonely because I like coasters the best when I'm with my friends. But there is something important about coaster count. It's the more coasters that someone's ridden, the better perspective they have about comparing coasters. Let's say someone asked me if Superman the Ride was more intense than Goliath in the Netherlands. I can answer that question where people who haven't ridden a lot of coasters can't. So if you ever find yourself in a raging debate on which coaster is better, if I were you, I would listen to the person who has ridden more coasters rather than the people who just sit at home watching POVs all day. So the next question is, what's your favorite RMC coaster, your favorite Intamin coaster, and your favorite B&M coaster?
Steel Vengeance is easily my favorite RMC. Top Thrill Dragster, my favorite coaster of all time. Definitely the best Intamin. And Mako for B&M. Haven't ridden that many, I'd say. Really good B&Ms. Obviously Jeff and Logan have in Europe, but Mako's definitely my personal favorite.
My favorite RMC is Steel Vengeance. This one's tough. I love Intimidator, but I ride it all the time since it's at my home park, so it gets a little old. I also love Millennium Force, but my number one that takes first place is Top Thrill Dragster. My favorite B&M is Fury 325.
Alright, let's get the basic train rolling. My favorite RMC is Steel Vengeance. My favorite B&M is Fury 325. And my favorite Intamin is Top Thrill Dragster. But I haven't ridden Skyrush, El Toro, or Intimidator 305 in the US yet, so I wouldn't be surprised if one of those takes the cake.
My favorite RMC is Twisted Coasters, not Six Flags Magic Mountain. My favorite Intamin is Superman Escape at Gold Coast Movie World. And then I've never been on a B&M because here in Australia we don't have any B&Ms that I know of.
My favorite RMC is obviously Steel Vengeance. Obviously. Lightning Rod is in second place, but Steel Vengeance is obviously first because that is the best RMC, just objectively. My favorite Intamin is Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. Super intense, super good. Love it. And my favorite B&M, it's probably Montu, but it's Raptor too. I mean, I know everyone would want to say Montu's better than Raptor, but I'm just biased. I just love Raptor. It's so good. I love inverts. Montu obviously is super good, but like, I love Raptor, so one of those.
My favorite RMC is definitely Steel Vengeance, my favorite Intamin is El Toro, and my favorite B&M is Tatsu.
My favorite RMC is Lightning Rod at Dollywood, my favorite Intamin is Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion, and my favorite B&M is Fury at Carowinds.
So my favorite RMC is definitely Lightning Rod at Dollywood. I love it so much. It's so intense and the airtime is insane. And my favorite Intamin is definitely Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. It's just so crazy, and night rides are also insane. And my favorite B&M is Fury 325 at Carowinds. I love it so much. It's so smooth, and it's just amazing.
My favorite RMC is also my only RMC, that is Untamed at Wallaby Holland. And that's not because it's bad that it's the best one and it's the only one. It is amazing. But yeah, I can't choose other than that. The best Intamin for me is Taron at Fantasialand. I just love well-themed experience, and Taron is definitely one of the best theme coasters that I've ridden. And the best B&M I've ridden, I would have to go with Shambhala at Portaventura. I love its floater airtime, and it's just long, smooth experience.
My favorite RMC is Steel Vengeance, my favorite Intamin is El Toro, and my favorite B&M is Nitro.
Outlaw Run is my favorite RMC. Maverick is my favorite Intamin, and Tatsu is my favorite B&M.
My favorite RMC obviously is Steel Vengeance, while my favorite Intamin is quite an unpopular one, I think. It's Skyrush at Hershey Park. The forces of that ride are just so good, and I love forceful rides, so that's a good for me. While my favorite B&M is Tatsu, the Flyer. I love that ride so much. Flyers are one of my favorite kind of coasters, and I really hope Fly is good too. I can't wait to try it.
My favorite RMC is Wicked Cyclone, my favorite Intamin is El Toro, and my favorite B&M is Fury 325.
My favorite RMC, I've only been on two, but my favorite RMC is Steel Vengeance. My favorite Intamin is El Toro. My favorite B&M, maybe Nitro? Oh, maybe Talon. I have no idea. There's a lot of B&Ms that I like.
My favorite RMC is Steel Vengeance. My favorite Intamin is Maverick, and my favorite B&M is definitely Leviathan.
For my favorite RMC, I'm going to be mainstream here. It's Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. Favorite Intamin is actually Top Thrill Dragster. I love that ride. And favorite B&M would have to be Raging Bull.
My favorite RMC is Steel Vengeance. My favorite Intamin is Millennium Force. Maverick is a close second, but I just love Millennium Force so much. And my favorite B&M is Diamondback at Kings Island.
My favorite RMC is Untamed at Walibi Holland. My favorite B&M is Shambhala at Port Aventura. And my favorite Intamin is Sterren at Fantasialand.
So since my answers are fairly generic, I think I'm just gonna say my top 3 favorites for each of those. So my top 3 favorite RMC coasters are 1 Lightning Rod, 2 Steel Vengeance, and 3 Storm Chaser. And then for Intamins, it probably goes 1 Top Thrill Dragster, 2 El Toro, and 3 King Ka. And then for B&M, it would be 1 Fury 325, 2 Shambhala, and 3 Mako. So if you're thinking like, wait a minute, that was completely different than his top 25 favorite coasters video. That's because that video was all the way in October. My opinions change every day. They might even change right when this video gets released. So if my opinion triggers you, I'm kind of sorry. It doesn't really matter. Now the next question is, what is your favorite B&M hypercoaster? And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's one of the most popular coaster models out there. It's built by a company called B&M, which stands for Bolliger and Mabillard. And those coasters are in between 200 feet and less than 300 feet. So let's ask the regional reps, what is your favorite B&M hyper?
My personal favorite B&M hyper is definitely Mako, because I think the smaller trains help it take the hills more aggressively, which just delivers a better quality of airtime compared to rides like Diamondback or Intimidator that have the staggered seating.
Mako at SeaWorld Orlando.
My favorite B&M hyper is definitely SeaWorld Orlando's Mako, and I don't know, the flow ejector on the ride is so good. The first half it's crazy, and also the last turn on the water is quite cool. Yeah, I like it.
My favorite B&M hyper is Mako.
Mako! Mako!
My favorite B&M hyper is Shambhala at Port Aventura.
My favorite B&M hyper is probably Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. I love that ride so much, and I get to ride it all the time.
I've only ridden 2, which would be Diamondback and Raging Bull, so I think I'd say Diamondback.
My favorite B&M hyper is definitely Shambhala at Portaventura. I love it so much. It has so much airtime, and it's also just really fun to watch as well.
I've only been on 1 B&M hyper, and that's Nitro, and it's really good, so that's my favorite.
I do really like the 2 B&M hypercoasters that I've ridden, which is Shambhala at Portaventura and Silver Star in Europa Park. But of which of these 2 is the best one, it isn't really in the competition. Shambhala is by far the best in my opinion. It is just amazing floater airtime, and I do almost like floater airtime as much as good ejector airtime.
No, this question isn't very hard for me, considering I've only ridden 1 B&M hyper, and that would be Raging Bull at my home park. Great ride.
Well, the only B&M hyper I have ridden is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure, so Nitro.
My very favorite B&M hyper is tied between 2, Mako and Behemoth.
My favorite B&M hyper is Nitro because that's the only one I've ridden, but that will change this summer, and it might be Candemonium.
So we've only ridden 2 B&M hypers, those 2 being Silver Star and Apollo's Chariot. And out of the 2, my favorite is Apollo's Chariot. I know it's a controversial opinion, but I think that if you're able to get room, the airtime on it is really good, and just the view from the coaster is so pretty, and it's just such a fun ride, and it's so underrated.
Yeah, I do like the view you get, but we definitely need to ride some more B&M hypers.
Now, me personally, I've had the opportunity to ride every B&M hyper that's in between 200 and 300 feet. And there's a few B&M hyper models that are shorter than 200 feet, like Hollywood Dream and stuff, and some other parks in China, but I haven't ridden those. And also, Candemonium is under construction, and no one's ridden that yet. But I have ridden every actual hypercoaster built by B&M. And since my number 1 is pretty obvious, I'm just going to rank them from 10 to 1 right now. So how I'd rank them is number 10, Silver Star at Europa Park in Germany. 9, Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. 8, Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. 7, Intimidator at Carowinds. 6, Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. 5, Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America. 4, Diamondback at Kings Island. 3, Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland in Canada. 2, Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. And number 1, Shambhala at Portaventura in Spain. So that's it. Hopefully you liked these questions. If you're a coaster enthusiast, you probably love this video. If you are not, I am sorry. But If you want to see more answers for the Q&A, there's a playlist that you can watch all of them if you want. And stay tuned for the next few questions of this Q&A. We'll see you guys later.